Most people who watch my channel, and probably a vast majority of Pokemon players in general, will attest that the third generation of Pokemon is one of the best generations, if not the best. A huge contribution to Hoenn being so well regarded is because of the incredible Pokemon that were introduced to us. We saw a new incredible legendary trio, some awesome pseudo-legendaries, and just some really incredible and well thought out Pokemon in general. So in honor of the remakes of this incredible generation, I am going to list for you my top 5 favorite Pokemon. But with the best, always have to come the worst. So this third video of Pokemon Month is my first time ever doing a double top 5, because the other half of this list is the top 5 worst Pokemon from the Hoenn region. Trust me, this list was incredibly hard for me to choose, and chances are you might not see your favorite Pokemon in the favorite Pokemon section, or you might even see it in the least favorite Pokemon section. So in that case, please leave your own list at the bottom in the comments. But for now, this is my top 5 favorite and top 5 least favorite Pokemon from the Hoenn region. The number 5 spot on this list will probably get me a little bit of hate, but what the hell, I'm going for it. The 5th best Pokemon from the 3rd generation is Castform. Now before you go ahead and click the unsub button, let me explain why I like this Pokemon. In Generation 3, Game Freak introduced weather effects, amongst the other drastic changes in this generation. These weather effects make a minor change to battling by buffing certain corresponding types, but none of that compares to the idea behind Castform. Castform changes its typing and design as a result of what type of weather effect is occurring in that battle. This affects certain moves he might have, and was really just an incredible idea for its time. But before this, I don't think I had ever seen a concept quite like it, which was really what landed Castform on this top list. But whenever a Pokemon may be incredible, it may also lack in other areas. Which is what leads me to the 5th worst Pokemon of this generation. Yeah, Castform is also the 5th worst Pokemon in Hoenn. Frankly, because while the idea was cool, Castform really sucks. His stats are pretty atrocious, and his design is a little mundane, but I can't complain all that much because he technically has 4 of them. Also, he's on a pair of balls, so that's a thing. My biggest problem with Castform is that they could have done so much more with his unique abilities and traits, but in the end, it just really fell flat. So, I like Castform for the ideas behind it, but I don't like the actual Pokemon all that much, which causes him to land on both the top 5 spots for this list. In the 1st generation of Pokemon, we received a Pokemon some of you might know by the name of Pikachu. Yes, this little yellow mutant rat thing that everyone knows, even if they have never played Pokemon in their life. Well, I kind of hate it. I would explain, but that's for another video entirely because Pikachu is not on this list. Well, in the 2nd generation, we got Pichu. I actually like this guy, except in Smash Bros. Why the fuck would you ever use attacks that hurt yourself? It's just dumb. But still, not on this list. Well, following suit of the previous generations, we got an electric mouse clone in the 3rd generation. But this time, it came in a pair. Great. Twice the stupidity. Minun and Plusle are really just worthless. They were kinda important because they were a huge proponent in the double battle system, which was introduced in 3rd gen, but what sucks is that they are terrible Pokemon. Neither of them have extraordinary stats or moveset, and don't even get me started on Helping Hand, because fuck if I knew what that actually did, I would probably still hate it. So in short, Minun and Plusle are underwhelming, and just one more of the gratuitous electric rat clone that we get every year that always sucks. Except for Pachirisu. I like Pachirisu. Gen 3 gave us a lot of Pokemon that have left a mark on me for a long time. It's because all these Pokemon were so creative and intriguing. But creative and intriguing can always be trumped by one thing: a kid's first shiny encounter. My very first shiny was a shiny Trapinch that I found and caught in the deserts of Hoenn, and I have loved his final evolution, Flygon, ever since. Seeing as Trapinch was my first shiny Pokemon, you can obviously understand that I wanted this damn thing evolved. I trained this thing relentlessly so I could have that shiny Flygon. Now I don't know if I'm just crazy, but seriously, I could not get my Vibrava to evolve into a Flygon. I trained it all the time, but it never actually evolved. Which only makes me want Flygon more because I've never actually legitimately trained one all the way from a Trapinch. Since I've discovered and trained that Trapinch, I lost a copy of Pokemon Sapphire that I had him on, but I'll never forget finding that shiny Trapinch and how much I wanted that goddamn Flygon. So fish Pokemon are normally not the best. Most people find Magikarp dumb, and who even fucking cares about Goldeen? But Gen 3 introduced a fish Pokemon, and goddamn, this thing frustrates me. Feebas angers me to no extent. It's not actually because I dislike its stats or its design or anything like that, it's just because it's so frustrating to catch. And if you haven't ever tried to catch one, well, I dare you to try, because it will most likely result in either a broken Game Boy or death by old age, because it takes hours upon hours to find a Feebas. Feebas are only found in a single grouping of water tiles on Route 119 outside of Fortree City. And Feebas will only appear in like 6 of those 436 tiles, and even then he has like a 3% chance of appearing in one. It is listed as being very rare. Well, that's a fucking understatement. How about it's so rare that you're lucky to see it even if you sacrifice a Go-Goat to the Pokegods and hope that it will heighten your chances? Feebas is so infuriating to catch that for a number of years I gave up on trying to get him until I was determined and finally caught him. And trust me, it was so worth it due to not only the satisfaction that I got from catching him, but also his evolution. Speaking of Feebas's evolution, even though I may hate Feebas with a passion because of how ridiculously hard he is to find, I can't help but love his evolution, Milotic. Milotic is one of the most interesting Pokemon I have ever trained to get. Because it doesn't evolve like you think it would. You gotta make this bitch beautiful to get one of these. In my many years of playing Pokemon, I don't think I've ever encountered a Pokemon that required so many meticulous rituals as Milotic. First you had to actually find a Feebas, which I mean, good god, solving the fucking Hodge conjecture is easier than finding one of these things. After receiving the blessing from God that is required to catch this thing, you have to raise its beauty to near max stats, requiring so many trial and error Pokeblock recipes. And after that, you finally have your Milotic, easily one of the weirdest Pokemon to try to obtain. And that's why I love this thing, because it requires such strange necessities to finally get this badass Pokemon. Which, by the way, Game Freak, we could really use a Mega Evolution for. Alright, so all the previous worst Pokemon on this list are minor annoyances to me. But Breloom? That thing can just go fuck itself. I absolutely cannot stand this thing, and I don't care what anyone says about its cool little mushroom hat or whatever you have to say to defend this Pokemon. It's so goddamn dumb. Now, I don't dislike it because of the design or anything. I just have a personal vendetta against this Pokemon. I've told this story before, but basically I encountered this Pokemon for the first time on some round Emerald, and it killed, in a very cheap fashion I might add, every single Pokemon in my party. A combination of critical hits and type advantages made this stupid spore-infested freak prevail over a party of 6 of my Pokemon. Ever since this incident, I have never dared to even think of wasting a Pokeball on one of these mutated fungi ever again. I harbor an intense hatred toward Breloom that is just not comprehensible to those who haven't experienced the utter bullshit that I went through with this godforsaken thing. And that's why I will always hate this Pokemon that deserves to be in a bowl of soup rather than a battle. With every generation, we see new Pokemon appear. Some are swept under the rug, others are just looked at with bland indifference, and then there are those select few that grow and become renowned for their appearance in that generation. These Pokemon always leave a lasting impact, whether it be by chance that they are well known, or if they were planned to serve some higher role in the series. The latter always being known as the incredibly well-crafted legendaries. With Generation 3, we saw a myriad of legendary Pokemon. The Sea Pokemon Kyogre, the Land Pokemon Groudon, the Wish Pokemon Jirachi, and the ruler of the sky and number 2 spot on this list, Rayquaza! Rayquaza is without a doubt one of the coolest legendaries ever conceived. First of all, his stats are absolutely incredible and his move pool only assists this statement. But what really gets me with Rayquaza is his design. You have to imagine as a little kid looking at my pixelated Game Boy, the first time ever seeing this Pokemon was jaw-dropping. The incredible patterns on its body, the menacing look in his eyes, everything about him was absolutely awe-inspiring, and I wanted him to be mine. I mean, I deserved him after that god-awful climb through the sky pillar with all the pitfalls and exploding clay dolls. I mean, God, Nintendo, did you actually want me to try to catch him? But I did, and it was so worth it. Which is why to this day he is still my second favorite Pokemon of all time, and one of the greatest Pokemon in the 3rd generation. But what could be the #1 best Pokemon from Hoenn? Well, before we get to that entry, we have to see the worst of the worst. You know, originally when I was making this list, Breloom was going to be the #1 worst Pokemon in Hoenn. Simply because, well, I personally fucking hate this thing. But in the process of scripting this video, something happened. I was filming a little known Nuzlocke that was appearing on my channel. It was all going quite well up until episode 12, where I lost my starter Pokemon and best friend to a fucking Wobbuffet. Now you're probably saying, well, Alfredo, that sucks, but Wobbuffet isn't from 3rd gen. So what's the worst Pokemon from Hoenn? Well, Wobbuffet might not have been from 3rd gen, but its pre-evolution Wynot is. So that's #1! It's not because I have any distaste towards Wynot, it's just because I fucking hate anything having to do with Wobbuffet and its stupid bulbous blue body. So you know what? All the blue Pokemon can go fuck themselves. All the psychic Pokemon can go fuck themselves. All the ones with 2 heads as well can, god damn it. I just really hate Wobbuffet. Third generation was monumental for the Pokemon franchise. It recreated the experience that we now call these games, bringing in double battles, personalities, beautiful locales, and the coolest fucking Pokemon ever, Deoxys! Deoxys is the DNA Pokemon, and his genetic code can be deciphered to read fucking awesome. Why the hell do I say these things? So before we get into things, a little backstory is required on me. I've always been one of those weird kids that actually enjoys learning, you know, one of those freaks. Well, one of my favorite topics of education is genetics, and guess what Deoxys is based around? That's right, fucking 7th grade biology, kids! So it makes perfect sense why I like Deoxys, because every single detail about him is related to science or genetics in one way or another. Its name, Deoxys, is an abbreviation of deoxyribonucleic acid, otherwise known as the building blocks of all genetic makeup, which is most commonly formed in a double helix. And just look at Deoxys' arms, you're damn right those are double helices. Deoxys also has a special feature about him. He has 4 different forms, which if you think about it makes him 4 Pokemon in one. But they also relate to DNA. His 4 forms are defense, neutral, attack, and speed, spelling out, you guessed it, DNAs. Also, Deoxys' regenerative ability, oh, that can't possibly be true in real life. Well, guess again, cause cells, the building blocks of all life, are notorious for the little habit of dividing, which is the whole reason why we can keep growing and developing as we get older. And finally, probably the coolest thing about this Pokemon, its Pokédex entry, which reads that it is an alien virus that came to Earth on a comet. This is so incredibly cool because viruses to this date are noted as being the closest things we have ever encountered to something of the extraterrestrial kind. In short, Deoxys is my favorite Pokemon from Hoenn and my favorite Pokemon of all time because of how much effort was put into the design and research of this Pokemon. Not to mention his absolutely crazy stats that he has in his multiple forms. Deoxys, in my eyes, is the most well-crafted Pokemon ever conceived, and that is why he is the #1 greatest Pokemon from the region of Hoenn. Oh my god, look at Rayquaza's Mega Evolution. It looks like one of those Chinese dragon things. This thing's goddamn cool.